How a crippled billionaire's heart was healed by the Black Doctor who changed his life forever. In a world where hope often flickers like a dying candle, one man's despair experienced a lightning bolt of change that seemed almost unreal. Henry Montgomery, a billionaire known for his ruthless business strategies, had fallen victim to a tragic accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down. His penthouse tower, once bustling with laughter and triumph, now echoed with silence as he sat alone, lost in the shadows of his former self. Then came Dr. Elijah Reed, a brilliant black physician with a reputation for performing the impossible, a man whose very hands appeared to possess the magic of life itself. But this wasn't just a story of recovery, it danced around the edges of mystery, hinting at an unexplained bond that would transcend their starkly different worlds. Henry had everything: a golden empire of wealth, but he also bore a heart heavy with bitterness. He looked out the sweeping windows of his luxury penthouse, watching the vibrant city pulse below, a blur of life that he could no longer touch. The void in his chest throbbed with an aching reminder of his loss, each passing day a constant reminder of what he had been robbed of. When Dr. Reed walked through his door, it was not just medical expertise walking in, it was a wave of otherworldly energy that seemed to buzz between them. The moment they locked eyes, a spark of connection flickered, setting off alarms in Henry's heart that he hadn't felt in years. As the days bled into weeks of relentless therapy, something miraculous began to unfold. Dr. Reed shared tales of healing that danced in the realm of legend, stories of patients who had recovered against all odds. The walls of Henry's despair began to crack, the light of possibility seeping in. But the intriguing part? Whispers among the staff spoke of Dr. Reed's unconventional methods. Could it be true? Did he really once save a man using nothing but his own willpower, healing him with a touch that transcended science? With each session, a bond was forged, a blend of hope, tension, and the shadows of secrets unspoken. Quiet murmurs filled the air as others questioned the doctor's unusual techniques. What's his story? They whispered, eyes darting over to the duo. Why is he so invested in this billionaire? There's something deeper here. The doubts and intrigue simmered, creating an unshakable tension as Henry slowly began to regain movement. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. But just as the flicker of hope brightened, a dark cloud loomed on the horizon. Henry received an anonymous note, the words scrawled in jagged handwriting, "Beware, Dr. Reed is not who he seems." It shook him, stopping his heart momentarily. Who was this man now wielding such power over his life? What secrets lay behind the doctor's calm exterior? Doubt slithered into his thoughts, threatening to unravel everything. With his heart racing and his hands trembling, Henry stared out into the night, the illuminated city feeling more treacherous than ever. What choice would he make, the path of trust or the road of skepticism? And who would truly emerge healed in the end? Henry sat in the stillness of his penthouse, the shadows stretching like cold fingers across the floor. The hint of dawn seeped through the curtains, but it did little to dispel the weight of the note, the jagged words carving doubt deep into his heart. Dr. Reed had been his lifeline, yet now suspicion bubbled like a poison in his veins. The doctor was healing him, wasn't he? An unexpected knock broke the silence, and Henry's heart leaped. It was too early for anyone else, except Dr. Reed. Hesitation gripped him as he leaned forward, hand hovering over the door handle. What if the truth wasn't as comforting as he had hoped? The thought of another person peering into his chaos made him hesitate, but beneath that fear lay something stronger, a need to know. With a quick breath, he opened the door. Dr. Reed stood there, his face warm and assuring. Henry. He entered, instantly radiating a calming presence that clashed with the growing storm in Henry's mind. How are you feeling today? Better, Henry lied, forcing a smile. The ache in his chest flared at the deceit, but the doctor's eyes held a spark of understanding that made the lie linger. Reed moved closer and began his routine, a blend of stretching and strength exercises that had become a lifeline of hope. Each time Henry pushed through pain, he felt the barrier of despair crack, revealing a glimmer of humanity he thought was lost forever. Yet the words of the note whispered in his ear, fueling paranoia. Midway through a set, Henry's body betrayed him, a spasm shot through his legs, throwing him off balance. He gripped the arm of his wheelchair, gritting his teeth against the pain, but the fall didn't come. Dr. Reed was there, catching him, his hands steady and firm. You have to keep trusting yourself, Henry, he urged, his eyes locked onto Henry's. But could he trust the man who had become his savior? Anger bubbled up, turning the air thick with tension. What if you're not who you seem? Henry blurted, his voice rising. Reed's expression didn't change, but a shadow crossed his features. You've been pulling through, don't let fear corrode your progress. Their gazes locked. The air crackled with unspoken truths. I received a note, Henry revealed, his heart racing. It says you're not who you claim to be. Reed stepped back, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. Henry, what if you're using me for something? Henry preyed on the doctor's silence, pelting him with doubt. What would I gain? Reed responded, his tone even but the tension mounting. To heal you is my only goal. A long pause hung between them, thick with unease. Just then, Henry's phone buzzed violently against the table, cutting the moment. He glanced at the screen, an unknown number. Anxiety surged within him. Could it be a friend? Reed asked cautiously. I don't know, Henry muttered. With a shaky breath, he swiped to pick it up. As he answered, the voice on the other end burned through the fog of confusion. Henry Montgomery? You need to listen carefully. Dr. Reed has a past and it's about to catch up with him. The call dropped, leaving Henry wide-eyed, breathless. What had he just heard? Dr. Reed narrowed his eyes, suspicion tightening the corners of his mouth. What did they say? A new wave of urgency flooded through Henry's veins. The walls felt like they were closing in. Who could he trust? As doubt loomed larger than ever, he realized he now stood at the edge of a precipice, with truth hovering just out of reach. The only thing clearer than his confusion was the impending storm that would soon burst free. Could he confront Dr. Reed and discover the truth, or would the shadows they both carried tear them apart? In the silence that followed, Henry's heart raced, wondering, terrified of what step he would choose next. Would he dare to delve into the depths of secrets waiting to be uncovered? Henry's breath hitched as he stared at Dr. Reed, his pulse racing like a runaway train. The doctor's calm demeanor only heightened the turmoil inside him. The words of the mysterious caller echoing in his mind sent adrenaline coursing through his veins. What passed? Henry's voice came out strained, tinged with fear. Reed's brow furrowed, but he quickly masked any hint of concern. This is not the time for distractions, Henry. Focus on your recovery. Distractions? The word felt like poison on his tongue. What if you're the distraction? What if you're hiding something crucial? Each accusation dripped from his lips as if it were a challenge, and he couldn't resist pushing back against the man he once revered. A flicker of annoyance crossed Reed's face, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. You need to let go of these fears if you want to heal, he replied, his words clipped. I want the truth. Henry shot back, his voice rising in intensity, almost drowning out the morning's muted light. The walls felt like they were closing in, suffocating him with uncertainty. Reed hesitated for a moment, the silence heavy and charged, but then he took a step back, his posture firm. You're feeling vulnerable, and that's understandable. But I assure you, I'm here to help you. Helping comes with trust. Henry's heart thundered in his chest. He was no longer the man who would accept everything that was handed to him. He needed answers, and he needed them now. The doctor's expression remained stoic, but Henry saw a glimmer of something else beneath the surface. Was it fear? Guilt? Then the phone buzzed again, shattering the tension in the room. It felt like the universe mocking him. With trembling hands, he swiped to answer, hoping against hope that it wasn't another cryptic warning. Henry? A woman's voice, strained and frantic, spilled through the receiver. You have to get out of there. He's not who you think he is. You don't know what he's capable of. Henry's heart plunged, terror gripping him like ice. Who is this? What are you talking about? Panic twisted in his gut, twisting the knife of confusion deeper. Before she could answer, the line went dead. He stared at the phone, disbelief etched across his face. Dr. Reed's demeanor shifted, a predator sizing up his prey. Who was that? Someone trying to warn me, Henry shot back, his pulse racing. Reed stepped closer, an unsettling calmness in his voice. They could be lying, Henry. You can't just take their word for it. You're vulnerable. Stop saying that. Henry's voice broke, desperation tightening its grip. You're making it sound like my pain is a weakness. In that moment of profound conflict, the silence felt nearly unbearable. The doctor's presence loomed over him, floodlights illuminating shadows that whispered of betrayal and fear. The clues twisted together into a knot he couldn't untangle. Do you think I'm some monster? Reed's question cut through the tension, raw and unexpected, searching for clarity. I don't know what to think. Henry admitted, the vulnerability spilling from his lips like a confession. Just then, a loud crash echoed outside the penthouse, jolting them both. Whatever calm was in the atmosphere evaporated, thick anxiety vaporizing into alarm. It's time to go, Reed declared sharply, eyes darting towards the sound. Go? Go where? Henry stammered, confusion wrestling with instincts to flee. Just trust me. Reed insisted, urgency piercing his tone. In that swift moment, decisions collided with doubt, and Henry felt the weight of 1,000 questions rising within him. Could he abandon the sanctuary he had built with Reed? Would running mean giving in to fear? Or was it the only way to reveal the truth? With the chaos outside rising like a tempest, Henry faced the haunting decision that loomed larger than any doubt he'd faced. Would he cling to the man he thought could save him, or would he risk it all to find his own salvation? The answer lingered just beyond his grasp, taunting him with its uncertainty, as the shadows outside gathered relentless in the dawn. The moment hung thick with tension. The power of Reed's presence pressed against Henry, almost choking him. Then suddenly, the sound of glass shattering sent a jolt through the air, the crash reverberating like thunder within the walls of the penthouse. What was that? Henry's voice trembled, the urgency in Reed's demeanor palpable. Just chaos. Stay close. Reed ordered, shifting his gaze to the door. His usually composed facade cracked just a little, revealing a glimpse of unease. As he darted toward the window, Henry couldn't shake the feeling that something horrible was lurking beyond the door. The sirens began to wail in the distance, and their mournful screams echoed through the apartment. Henry's heart raced faster than it ever had. He was caught between the safety of the familiar and the need to escape the new fears clawing at him. Why are we still standing here? We need to do something. Henry almost shouted, his breath coming in quick bursts. He felt the walls of his sanctuary crumbling. Reed's gaze held a fire, sharp enough to cut through the chaos. If we leave now without a plan, we might end up trapped. There are forces at play here that you can't begin to comprehend. Henry's pulse thudded loudly in his ears, drowning out everything else. What forces? You keep talking in riddles. Just tell me what's happening. He pressed, desperation clawing at his throat. Reed let out a heavy sigh, his shoulders visibly relaxing for a brief moment. People don't just come into this world for no reason, Henry. Everyone has their motives. What kind of cryptic nonsense is that? Henry shot back, frustration whipping through him. Suddenly, another crash came, a cacophony of chaos, this time from the hall. Fear morphed into a pressing weight in his chest. We need to go. Before he could register the intent behind his own thoughts, he made a move toward the door. Just as he reached for the handle, Reed's hand clamped around his wrist, stopping him cold. No. The doctor's voice had sharpened dangerously. If you open that door, it might be the last thing you ever do. The uncertainty hung in the air, thick and painful. Henry's mind raced as he considered Reed's warning. What was waiting for him beyond the door? Why should I trust you? A tremor ran through Henry's voice, fear and defiance tangled in his gut. Reed's grip loosened, but his expression remained resolute, betraying none of the unease that Henry felt. Because despite everything, I'm still the only person who has your best interest at heart. The truth of those words sent a shiver down Henry's spine. But who could he trust? The darkened room swirled around him as his mind grappled with the conflicting emotions engulfing him. Suddenly, there was a loud thud against the door, enough to rattle the hinges. Henry stepped back involuntarily, eyes wide with panic. They're coming. He breathed, the color draining from his face as the reality of their situation set in. Reed took a firm step forward, the quiet strength of resolve back in his posture. We need to find another way out. Follow my lead. With the urgency of the moment peaking, Henry forced himself to focus. He couldn't ignore the woman's warning, nor could he dismiss the man he once trusted. His heart pounded a frantic rhythm. Choices slashed through his mind like knives, sharp and unforgiving. As they moved away from the door, shattered glass crunched underfoot, the sound amplified in the silence that followed. The shadows of uncertainty danced around him, heavy with secrets yet to be revealed. With each step away from the door, the reality of betrayal hung heavy in the air. But what choice would he make when each direction seemed equally perilous? Was he truly prepared to uncover the truth no matter the cost? The walls whispered of choices left behind, and Henry felt the stirrings of decisions yet to come as they crept towards the unknown, one variable lingering over everything. Would escaping lead him to the truth he sought, or straight into danger? Henry followed Reed as they maneuvered through the dimly lit penthouse, each shadow stretching ominously. The sound of pounding footsteps echoed from the hall, closer and closer, like the ominous ticking of a clock counting down to disaster. Where do we go? Henry whispered, desperation creeping into his tone. Through the kitchen. There's a service entrance we can use, Reed replied, glancing back at the door as another heavy thud shook the frame. With every distorted reflection in the glass of the cabinets, Henry saw his own fear mirrored back, wide eyes, clenched jaw, and a heart racing wildly. Did Reed know what was truly happening? Doubts piled like bricks in his mind, but now wasn't the time for hesitation. Reed led the way, slipping into the kitchen with practiced ease. The stark white tiles gleamed, the bright lights flickering ominously overhead. It felt wrong, too sterile for the chaos outside. Help me move this fridge, Reed commanded, urgency coursing through his voice as he stepped toward the large appliance blocking a narrow door. Henry rushed to assist, adrenaline lending him the strength he needed. Together they pushed, grunting, sweat beading on their foreheads. The metal groaned and shifted, but just as they were about to clear a path, the door burst open behind them. Reed sprang into action, shoving Henry into the darkened alcove of the pantry, just as two men stormed in. Get the doctor. One of them barked, glancing wildly around the kitchen. Pale faces smirked with malice, as if they relished the hunt. Henry's breath hitched, the air in the cramped space thick and suffocating. His heart pounded like a hammer against the seemingly impenetrable wall of the pantry. The last vestiges of safety faded as he gripped the shelves, feeling the cool metal dig into his palms. They're looking for you, Henry whispered, panic drawing tight around him. They won't find me here, Reed replied, his voice a quiet steel. Trust me. Through the crack in the pantry door, Henry could see the men rifling through the kitchen drawers. Their faces were angry, desperate. It was unsettling to watch the chaos unfold, a world he thought he understood shoving its way into every corner of his reality. Suddenly, one of the men turned back, retrieving a phone. "The doc ain't here," he shouted. "Move on to the next floor." Henry felt a spike of hope, but just as quickly, it crumbled. They were still after Reed, and time was ticking away. "Now, we move," Reed whispered, pushing the door open slowly. They slipped out into the bright kitchen, scanning for any signs of danger. The men were nowhere in sight, but they weren't far behind. Henry felt heat rising in his chest. What did they want with Reed? "Stay close," Reed instructed as he grabbed Henry's arm. Together, they slipped toward the service entrance. Just as they reached the door, another crash thundered from the hallway, a sound too raw, too chaotic to ignore. Henry froze, fear clawing at him again. What should we do? Reed's eyes narrowed, his mind racing. "We have to risk it. Stay by my side." With a blast of courage, they shoved through the service door and stepped into the dim corridor beyond. The air smelled of stale bread and panic, as an unsettling silence wrapped around them. Without a word, they crept forward, listening for any hint of pursuit, hearts pounding in sync with their uneven steps. And then they heard a guttural yell followed by the smash of glass. They could not turn back now. "Do you trust me?" Reed asked, urgency etching his features. Henry hesitated, his gut twisted with doubt. I don't know." "Then you have to make a choice right now," Reed pressed, his voice low and fierce. "Follow me and find out the truth, or stay back and risk everything." The air thickened around them, the weight of decision heavy in the silence. Henry felt the stakes rise, a storm of uncertainty and fear swirling within him. Could he embrace the chaos for answers? They stood on the brink of discovery, but no matter the path chosen, the shadows were already closing in. Henry's mind raced as he tried to wrap his thoughts around Reed's words. What truth could be so valuable that it was worth the danger lurking just inches away? He could hear the echoes of chaos behind them, and time felt like a tightrope stretched impossibly thin. He took a deep breath, swallowing his fear. "I'll follow you," he said, the decision sliding from his lips like an invisible thread tying him to Reed. "Good. Stay close," Reed replied, slipping into the shadows ahead. They moved cautiously, pressing against the walls, every creak of the floorboard sending jolts of terror through Henry. As they rounded a corner, the dim corridor opened up into a wider space, the service elevator, its metal doors slightly ajar. It looked foreboding, but it was their best option. Reed reached for the doors, pushing them apart with a groan that seemed to echo down the hallway. "Get in," he urged, his eyes darting nervously. Henry hesitated, but the shadows were creeping closer, and he complied. Inside, the air was cooler, tinged with the faint smell of machinery and oil. Henry leaned against the wall, his breath coming in sharp bursts. Reed pressed the button for the basement, but just as the doors began to close, a loud thud echoed from the hallway. "Stop!" a voice shouted. Henry's heart sank as he felt panic rise. "They're coming." "Hold on," Reed whispered, eyes locked on the emerging figures, the men from the kitchen. He reached into his pocket, revealing a slender object. A knife, glinting ominously under the dim lights of the elevator. "Is that really necessary?" Henry blurted, his stomach twisting with dread. "You'll understand soon enough," Reed answered, his jaw set. The elevator resumed its descent, and Henry felt gravity pulling him into a pit of fear. Just then, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around them. "What's happening?" Henry gripped the railing, panic clawing at his throat. "The power is unstable." "They must have cut it," Reed muttered, eyes narrowed in focus. The elevator jolted to a stop, throwing them both against the metal walls. Henry felt his heart race even more. "We're stuck." "No, we're not." Reed began to pry open the elevator doors. "Help me." They grunted together, forcing the doors apart inch by agonizing inch. The dim light from the basement streamed in, but so did the echo of footsteps approaching, urgent and menacing. Hurry! Henry felt the walls closing in, an overwhelming sense of claustrophobia washing over him. He could dimly hear shouts and the sound of pounding feet growing closer. With one last push, they pried the doors open wide enough to slip through, tumbling into the basement. The heavy scent of dampness and dust hit them, a stark contrast to the chaos above. Which way? Henry gasped, scanning the area. The basement was a labyrinth of pipes and shadows, disorienting and filled with hidden risks. Follow me, Reed commanded, darting to the left. They weaved through a maze of crates, heartbeats echoing in his ears. As they reached a dead end, Reed stopped, eyeing a nearby vent. We can get out through there. Henry's heart sank again at the thought of squeezing through small spaces. What if they find us? They will if we don't move, Reed urged, already setting to work on the vent cover. Just as the last screw fell away, the sound of running feet approached. The men were close, too close. Adrenaline kicked in. Henry scrambled to the vent, his body barely fitting through. He felt Reed's hands pushing him along, urging him on. Just as Henry pulled himself into the narrow tunnel and turned back to help Reed, a shadow loomed at the entrance. A figure, silhouetted in the dim light, stood at the mouth of the vent. Reed! Hurry! Henry's voice echoed in the confined space, fear clawing at him. With a final push, Reed tumbled in just as the figure lunged forward. Metal clanged against metal as the shadow struck. Go! Reed yelled through gritted teeth, scrambling to block the entrance. As they crawled further into the vent, Henry turned to see the fight unfolding, a stark flash of fear and adrenaline coursing through him. Could they escape the darkness? Or was it already too late? With breath shallow and hope dwindling, they pushed deeper into the unknown. The vent was tight, a choking tunnel of metal and dust. Henry didn't have time to think about how filthy it was. All he could focus on was the sound of the scuffle behind them, the thud of Reed's body against the vent wall, the unruly whispers of the intruder, and the rasp of breaths that seemed to carry a sinister intent. Keep going! Reed shouted, urgency lacing his voice. Henry's heart thundered as he crawled forward, hands scrambling against the cool, gritty surface. Panic clawed at him like a wild animal, gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. Tight spaces didn't sit well with him, but there was no turning back now. Reed was fighting for them, and he needed an escape route. The tunnel twisted and turned, and every bend felt like it might lead to either salvation or more danger. Henry! Reed's voice was sharp, pulling him from his spiraling fear. Focus. Just keep moving. They crawled in silence now, the weight of their breaths heavy in the cramped space. Time stretched painfully as Henry's mind raced through possibilities. What had happened back there? Was the figure still pursuing them? Sweat trickled down, mingling with adrenaline. For a heartbeat, he felt a sense of bitter despair. What if they didn't make it out? The vent opened suddenly, spilling into a larger room that smelled of mildew and rust. The light flickered weakly from a solitary bulb hanging overhead. Reed squeezed through just ahead of Henry and quickly pushed himself to his feet, scanning the room. Look for an exit. His voice was low, but there was an intensity that shot through Henry, igniting a spark of determination. Henry observed the space, piles of discarded equipment, crates stacked haphazardly, shadows throwing a thick curtain over the area. But then his gaze fell on a marked door at the far end. Could that be their way out? Over there. He pointed, feeling the rush of hope surge through him, but Reed's expression tightened. Wait. We don't know what's out there, Reed cautioned, his eyes darting. Suddenly, the distant echo of footsteps broke through the silence, unsteady but growing louder. A jolt of fear shot through Henry. We don't have time. Reed didn't reply. He stared at the door, brow furrowing with an intense focus. We'll have to make a run for it. Follow my lead. Henry nodded, adrenaline pushing him into motion. They scurried toward the door. Each step felt heavier, the sense of dread creeping back as the sounds from behind them became more defined, shouting voices, angry and determined. The moment Reed reached the door, he hesitated, glancing back. The shadows gathered, forming a collective threat pushing through the vent. Now! He shouted, throwing the door open and rushing outside. Henry stumbled out just as the shouts intensified. They were close, so close they stepped into a dimly lit hallway, a stark contrast to the chaos they were escaping. Reed didn't waste a moment, he sprinted forward, pulling Henry along. The corridor twisted and turned, the air thick with tension. All around them, shadows lurked, flickering as they dashed from one patch of light to the next. They rounded a corner, and then another, the sounds of pursuit trailing like dark clouds behind them. What do we do? Henry gasped, breathless. Reed pressed his back against a wall, eyes darting as if weighing options. We need to split up. Are you crazy? Panic rose again, clawing at Henry's chest. We'll never find each other. Trust me, Reed's determination cut through the panic. If I stay with you, we're trapped. If we split up, one of us stands a better chance. Henry swallowed hard, vision blurring as the weight of the decision pressed down. But just go. Reed shouted, urgency slicing through his voice. Meet me at the old storage facility. I'll find you. Before Henry could respond, Reed dashed away down the corridor, melting into the darkness. Fear gripped Henry's gut, but he knew he couldn't falter. With one last breath to steady himself, he turned, sprinting toward an uncertain fate, heart racing like wild horses in his chest. The dark continued to whisper threats as he pressed on. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. But could he outrun the shadows? So many questions lingered, but one nagged at him the most: what awaited them in the depths of this labyrinth? He pushed forward, the darkness swallowing him once more. Henry's feet thundered against the cold, concrete floor as he raced through the dimly lit corridor. Sweat dripped from his brow, pooling at his temples. The cacophony of his heartbeats drowned out the chaotic sounds behind him, but he could still picture Reed's silhouette slipping away into the shadows, trapped, lonely, and each heartbeat a reminder of that risk. The corridor twisted, a serpentine maze designed to confound. Every glance over his shoulder felt like a gamble, the shadows growing thicker, more alive. A surge of dread gripped him as he imagined the pursuing figure rising up from the darkness. Breathing heavily, he forced his focus inward, repeating the mantra in his mind, escape. Just escape. Suddenly, he skidded to a halt, the faint flicker of lights ahead catching his attention. A wide door stood slightly ajar, tumbling out muted light that danced on the concrete wall. He pressed his back against the corridor's edge and peered into the room. Inside, something stirred. Boxes and disheveled furniture cluttered the floor, casting menacing shapes across the ground. A window overlooked a skyline painted by the setting sun, but the trepidation clawed at him. If someone was in there, this could lead to more danger. He took a deep breath, his instincts screaming at him to move forward. Just be quick, he whispered to himself, pushing through the door. The air buzzed with tension. Every creak of the floorboards beneath him felt amplified as he stepped in, eyes flicking from corner to corner. In that moment, he felt incredibly small, like a piece on a chessboard surrounded by giants. Then he noticed something on the wall: old photographs, dusty and faded. Familiar faces stared back at him. It was Reed, laughing with a group, and there it was, the infuriating glint of confidence in his eyes. Henry's heart twisted at the thought of leaving him behind. He mustered his resolve, but as he scanned the room again, he felt a prickling sensation, a sense that he was not alone. A shuffling sound echoed from the shadows. Henry's pulse raced as he sprang to a pile of crates, ducking low. Whoever or whatever was lurking might just be the end of him. He craned his neck just enough to peek around the edge. A figure emerged, silhouetted against the last rays of daylight filtering through the window. It was too dark to see clearly, but the outline suggested a menacing presence. The figure moved, the soft rustle of fabric and the crack of a shoe against a wooden floor sending chills down Henry's spine. "Show yourself," a raspy voice called out, drenched in malice. "You can't hide from me." With a flicker of bravery, Henry pushed himself up and shouted, "I'm not here to fight. Just let me go." The figure paused, weighing his words, and for a terrifying moment, silence enveloped the room like a heavy fog. Henry felt like a deer in the headlights, frozen. His mind raced. What if this was one of them? What if they could take him out with just a whisper? "Why should I?" The voice answered, a cruel edge sharpening each syllable. "I have nothing of value to steal." His voice cracked, desperation clawing at his throat. "But I know how to escape this place." That seemed to pierce through the fog. The figure shifted, peering closer, eyes narrowing. Henry's heart sank, he could almost see the glint of a blade in the dim light. The risk of betrayal sliced through the air between them. "What do you know?" The question dripped with suspicion. I was with someone, a friend," he confessed, wondering if the honesty would buy him a bit of grace. "He went another way, but if we're both going to get out alive, we need to work together." A sudden crash from deeper in the corridor jolted Henry, and the figure jumped, instincts kicking in. Panic gripped him once more. The noise was thunderous and nearer now, footsteps echoing with a furious intent, the shadows of pursuit blending into terrifying shapes. "Now, your life depends on me, and mine on you," Henry murmured, feeling all the walls close in around him. "What will it be?" As the faint glow of another figure flickered at the doorway, the room once again filled with the uncertainty of who could be trusted. Would this stranger join him? Or was he walking into another trap? The darkness was their only certainty, and who would survive the next moments remained unclear. Henry's heart raced as he braced himself against the crates, the tension like a live wire in the air. The weight of the figure's gaze bore down on him, each second stretching into eternity. In a space where shadows merged with the unknown, he felt every muscle quivering with uncertainty. "Listen, I know it doesn't matter to you who I am," Henry began, forcing the words through the tightness in his throat. "But we're in danger right now. We can't waste time." The figure stepped forward into the light, and Henry's breath snagged in his chest. This wasn't just a stranger. The sharp angles of the face and the fierce eyes sent recognition flooding over him. It was Aaron, a notorious smuggler rumored to have connections that could lead to freedom or death. "I heard you," Aaron replied, his voice dark and low. "But trust is a currency here, and it's in short supply." The crashing sounds in the corridor grew louder, punctuating Aaron's words with urgency. Henry's mind raced. He had to get them both out. Convincing him would be the only way to survive. "Read, my friend," Henry said, grabbing at the thread of hope. "He's still out there. If we work together, we have a chance." Aaron's expression didn't falter, but there was a flicker of something, perhaps curiosity. "You think you can lead me to safety?" "I know a way," Henry insisted, swallowing hard. "It's not far, but we need to go now." A grunt from the corridor sent adrenaline coursing through Henry's veins. Glancing at the doorway, he caught a glimpse of shifting shadows. Whoever it was, they were growing closer. Aaron's eyes narrowed as he considered his next move. "Tell me what you have planned. You're not the only one whose life is on the line." Henry felt a surge of frustration. He didn't have the luxury of time. There's a service stairwell at the end of this hall. It leads to the back of the building. If we're quick about it, he hesitated, noting Aaron's caution. "Trust me. I've used it before." "And why should I trust you?" Aaron shot back, the hardness in his voice turning to suspicion. "Because staying here means we die." Henry shouted, desperation cracking his voice. "In or out, Aaron?" A tense silence enveloped them as the crashing intensified, breaths held, eyes locked. Fine, Aaron finally relented, a begrudging seriousness replacing the earlier sneer. Lead the way. But know this, if you try to double-cross me, I won't hesitate. Each heartbeat echoed as they moved toward the exit. The door creaked under their weight, and the eerie atmosphere of the room seemed to close in. Henry led the way into the corridor, his instincts sharpening with each step. They maneuvered past piles of debris, slipping into the embrace of the shadows. They turned the corner just as the door behind them swung wide, revealing two masked figures. Henry's heart plummeted. Their violent intentions were clear as they barreled through, weapons drawn. "Go!" he yelled, adrenaline propelling them forward. Aaron sprinted after him, their footsteps a desperate rhythm against the concrete. The dim hallway blurred into a tunnel of chaos, and with every glance behind, the sinister figures loomed closer. "Quick, the stairwell!" Henry shouted, his mind racing through the paths he knew by heart. They turned another corner, the heavy air thick with fear, but there it was at the end, the door marked with faded letters. They barreled toward it, feet pounding, but a sudden shout from behind made the blood run cold in Henry's veins. "Stop right there!" A voice rang out, steely and demanding. The figures were closing in, shadows stretching further. "Now or never." Aaron's voice cut through, urging Henry forward. Just as they reached the door, a heavy shot rang out, echoing sharply across the corridor. "Go!" Henry cried, yanking the door open. Beyond it lay the unknown, a glimpse of freedom or a new nightmare. Would they face the world together, or would the shadows reclaim them both? As the door swung shut behind them, the sound of chaos faded, but Henry's heart still raced. He and Aaron stood on the threshold of an uncertain fate. With the sound of pursuing footsteps still ringing in his ears, an unsettling thought nagged at him. What new dangers awaited them just outside? As the door creaked, the darkness seemed to swallow the last light, leaving them in a world where survival was the only option. The passage was narrow, the air growing denser with every step. Henry's heart hammered in his chest, panic coursing through his veins. The pounding footsteps from behind were relentless, each one a reminder that danger was barreling toward them. He and Aaron moved swiftly through the dimly lit stairwell, urgency pushing them closer to the exit. "Keep moving," Aaron urged, glancing back only once, his expression rigid with focus. Henry felt a rush of adrenaline as he pushed himself harder, determination mingling with fear. How had he gotten to this point? Just days ago, he had been a paralyzed billionaire, lost in despair, but now it felt as if he were fighting for his life. They burst into a small landing, gasping for breath. "We need to get out of here," Aaron said, his voice low. "Where's this exit you were talking about?" "Just a few floors up," Henry replied. "If we can reach the roof, there's a fire escape." The thought of freedom ignited a flicker of hope inside him. As they sprinted upward, the shouts of the pursuers echoed through the stairwell, a haunting chorus that urged them on. Henry's lungs burned, his muscles protested the strain, but the thought of being caught clawed at him with desperation. Progressing quicker, they finally reached the roof access door, a steel frame that felt intimidating but filled with promise. Aaron reached for the handle, glancing back yet again. "Get ready." With a grunt, he shoved the door open, and they stepped outside into the cool night air. A rush of wind met them, but this was no time to celebrate. They raced across the roof, scanning for the fire escape ladder. "There!" Henry shouted, pointing to the edge of the building. The outline of the ladder stood against the skyline, a neon promise of escape. They leapt toward it, every second feeling like an eternity as they learned to trust in each other more rapidly than ever, but before they could reach it, a shadow loomed behind them. "Stop right there." The world turned slow as Henry spun around, terror tightening its grip. A masked figure was barreling toward them, arms raised, ready to strike. Henry's instincts kicked in. "Run!" he shouted, shoving Aaron forward. They darted toward the ladder, and as they scrambled up, a shot rang out. The deafening sound split the air, ricocheting off the nearby buildings. "Are you hit?" Aaron gasped, climbing alongside him. "No, just move," Henry urged, fear mingling with adrenaline as they reached the rooftop's edge and leaped onto the fire escape. They descended quickly, a jumbled mix of frantic motion and desperate breaths. Finally reaching the ground, the thrill of survival washed over them like a tide, but there was no room for respite. They needed to disappear from the scene, to find safety. "Where do we go?" Henry asked, wildly searching the street. Aaron looked contemplative for just a moment before he responded, "There's a safe house nearby my contact. We can figure it out there." Henry nodded, grateful for Aaron's confidence. They broke into a run, moving through the darkened alleys, navigating the cityscape that had once seemed so familiar but now felt foreign and menacing. After what felt like an eternity, they approached a dilapidated building shrouded in shadows. "This is it," Aaron said, breathless but calm, knocking on the door with a secret pattern. A moment later, it opened. A woman stood there, her eyes narrowed, sharp and assessing. "You two made it," she said, relief coloring her tone. "Get inside. We need to talk." Inside, the atmosphere was more welcoming, cluttered with maps, old newspapers, and a single flickering light that battled against darkness. The woman shut the door tightly behind them, blocking out the chaos of the outside world. "Who are you?" Henry inquired, still catching his breath as they settled in. "I'm Lena." "Aaron's contact," she replied, sensing the tension between them. "You've stumbled into something way over your heads. And trust me, they won't stop hunting until they find you." A chill ran down Henry's spine. All the fears that had been gnawing at him surged to the forefront of his mind. He had escaped, yes, but what awaited them was far from over. "We need to know what we're up against," Aaron asserted, his voice steady, a clear contrast to the storm brewing within Henry's heart. "What's their game?" Lena looked at both men, weighing her options. "It's complicated. But if we're going to make it through this, we must confront the truth. You have more tied to this than you realize, Henry." The weight of her words hung heavily in the air, a dark wave crashing over the threads of their precarious alliance. It was not only about survival anymore. The threads were pulling tighter, leading them down a path that would unveil secrets buried within. "Let us face it together," Aaron said, determination hardening his voice. Henry nodded, ready to stand firm with them. They would stand against the incoming storm, together. And as they moved deeper into the dim light, new paths would be forged, secrets uncovered, and the battles ahead would test them beyond what any of them had anticipated. In a world where shadows threatened at every turn, their newfound alliance gave birth to the first flickers of hope. They were alive. They would not succumb. Together, now's the time to act. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now, each tap feeds the algorithm. We want to hear all about your theories and reactions in the comments, so flood the section with your thoughts on how this wild ride ends. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this explosive conclusion. Your support is everything to us. We're counting on you.